Hi, I'm Krista West. I am the designer and owner of Avlea Folk Embroidery, and I am long overdue for a long FlossTube. So, welcome if you're here. So great to have you here. Well, clearly you are here. But before I jump in, today I'm going to share a bunch of releases. Some things that have already released and some things that are upcoming for the next couple of months that we can all get excited about, and talk about some new projects and just kind of give you a general update on what's been happening here in the lovely, amazing world of folk embroidery. Before I begin, I just want to remind everyone where you can find all the things. To see the entire line of my designs, you can visit the Avlea website, which is avleaembroidery.com. It's in the notes. Why the name Avlea? I get asked this a lot. Because Avlea in Greek means courtyard, and the courtyard is where women would have sat and stitched and hung out during the middle of the day, taking a break. And that's really what I love about folk embroidery, is that it brings people together. It gives us that little break. It's refreshing, it's beautiful, and then we get something really great to enjoy in our homes, in our offices, wherever we choose to put a little splash of folk embroidery. So that's where the name comes from. I think we just need to jump in. Oh, why have I been so busy and why haven't I been here? So that might be good to address. So those of you who follow me on YouTube probably noticed that over the last couple of months, I've just done a few short YouTubes, these little short ones. I attended a webinar back in September and got this idea, and I tried it out, but actually, and it is great. So like there's little 10-minute floss tubes, mini floss tubes on certain designs. And I released about 4 or 5 of those, maybe 6. And they're great, but they just actually take a little bit more time than doing just a good old fashioned long version floss tube where I can just kind of show all this stuff. So for right now, while things have been really busy for me, I'm gonna kind of revert to doing the longer version for right now. I might go back to the shorter version eventually, but it just takes a lot more kind of like processing and uploading and things like that. So let's go long, let's enjoy it. So we're gonna dive in. The other thing that's been keeping me very busy is the book. Oh, so exciting. Those of you new here, last year I broke my foot, and the silver lining was that I got a ton of time to sit around. I had to be off my foot for 2 months, and I got to sit around, and I had been really thinking about doing a book on folk embroidery, and being injured and not being able to go anywhere or do anything really helped make that happen. I pulled everything together, realized I had the makings of a great book on folk embroidery, something that would be an introduction. I wanted something that was an introduction to those who had never experienced folk embroidery and were really interested, but I also wanted it to have value for more experienced stitchers. So my book is coming out this summer. I back up there. I was super excited too that actually about maybe 4 weeks after I'd finished it, I floated it to a bunch of publishers, and right away, David and Charles, publishers in London, picked it up. Very exciting. They're a great, great publishing group. They produce a lot of high quality, really beautiful. They're known for producing really beautiful craft and hobby books. They do books on textiles and gardening and things like that. And they have a really great distribution network too. So the book will be available on Amazon. We'll be able to sell it on the Avlea website. And then it will also be like in the little, when you go into like a Michael's or a Joann's or something and they have that little rounder of all the different books, it'll be in there. So it's really exciting. So this last fall, I've spent a lot of time doing the editing and then formatting all of the charts, because the book is laid out. It's going to have 14 what we're calling essential projects. Those will be their full samples made. They're having their beauty photos in London right now. That's actually what they call them. It cracks me up every time I say it. And they, and we've just finished in the editing, but the charts, I had to do a ton of chart formatting in November, days and days and days of chart formatting, because in addition to those essential projects, there will be 175 charts. There's a full design library in the back of the book. And then I've got chapters on basically how you use those, like to make different kinds of projects, how you do the math, how you calculate how much fabric you need, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really thinking of this book as really inspiration meets encyclopedia. So, I mean, clearly not an encyclopedia of all folk embroidery. That would be almost impossible because it's all over the world. There's so much wonderful folk embroidery out there. But this at least gives a really good, solid kind of base to start with. So the book's coming out in August. Very excited. You'll be hearing more about that. And then, if that wasn't enough to keep me really busy, I actually, over the last year, I have been transitioning. Those of you who have been with me a while know that the majority of my professional career I've spent as an ecclesiastical tailor, a specialty tailor for Greek Orthodox churches. That's all the fabrics you see behind me. And just sort of the short story is that the economics of custom tailoring have changed dramatically post-COVID. And I needed to find a way to still offer high quality garments, but without the incredible expense and time load of custom tailoring. So my husband and I have been working on creating a ready-made garment company that's basically all of my designs, and we're doing things in a more efficient match. We're doing batch cutting, and I've added all these like efficiency things and streamlining and standardized sizing and things that really help keep the price down. And I thought that transition was going to take, I figured it would take 3 to 5 years. To my huge surprise, this year it took 3 to 5 months. So I figured I would still have years and years of custom tailoring ahead of me. And instead, all of my clients love the new ready-made garments. They're just so much more affordable. So anyways, so that's kept me quite busy over the last few months, but I'm starting to kind of see my way through the big bulk of that work and kind of really delving back into my design work. And it's been so wonderful and so fun. And of course I've been stitching all the way because I always stitch every day. Okay, so let's jump in and talk about new releases. Actually, I'll just show you December's release, which many of you have seen, but this is the Kallithea Kaleidoscope. This is such a cheery design. When I designed this, it's inspired by a traditional Greek island cushion. And I was so struck by how these little blocks, let me get a little closer on those, how those little blocks look, they reminded me of quilt blocks. And I just feel like quilting is having such a moment right now that I thought that would be really cool to do something that kind of had this little crossover with quilting. And anyways, when I first designed it, this is very close to the original, very, very vibrant, high contrast palette. And I thought, well, is that too bright? I mean, not for me. I love color, but I have to think about whether people want something that's that bright. So I did a subdued version as well too, that was done more in rosewoods and soft olive greens and things like that. And interestingly enough, when we started stitching the samples, this one clearly won out. And so this is the one that went to press, so to speak. So this is the Kallithea Kaleidoscope kit. And it's just a great, happy, cheerful design. I felt really good about releasing this in December because it has a little bit of a Christmassy feel, but like a lot of folk embroidery that's very red forward, you can really pretty much use it any time of the year. You could set this out in spring with a nice, green plant on it, and it would also just look amazing. So that's Kallithea Kaleidoscope. These kind of reminded me of little kaleidoscopes. So, and Kallithea is it's a little village. So that's where the name comes from. So that's that one. That one's already released. It's already on the website. Let's talk about what is just released. In fact, I just uploaded these yesterday onto the website. The first one is our Adriatic Aster cushion. Now, this is another design stitched with the sole wool, the Kremke sole wool cobweb lace weight yarn. That is such a mouthful. And while most of my designs are stitched with DMC floss, and that's a very intentional choice because DMC is very color fast, it's machine washable, it's great for items you're making that you're actually going to be using and needing to launder over the years. I like doing some projects that have something different in them. It's kind of fun. So I've used the sole wool was in my Aegean ornaments series that we released in, I think that released in October. Yeah, I think it was October. And then I've been working on this one as well because I thought it might be nice for someone to have the sole wool cobweb lace. Part of what makes it so great is the texture is really soft It's softer than the Appleton's Cruel Wool. Now I use the Appleton's Cruel Wool for some of my kits and it's also great, but it's a little thicker. The cobweb lace is quite a bit finer and you get this really kind of soft, cozy wool texture. Oh, and if anybody's wondering, my finger is fine. I just have a little bit of trigger finger flaring. And so I wear this little brace when that happens and it helps like kind of just get it back to normal. So anyways, that's why my little finger brace is here. But so this, what I really wanted with this design is, this is like a really simple motif that is, again, from a Greek island design. It's from one of my vintage needlework booklets, but I've heavily kind of adapted it because the original was much smaller. So I've made it larger, and it's a daisy design, which I really love, but setting these really cool geometrics, and I'm always just such a sucker for a diamond in a square. I love the look of that because I feel like it draws you into the embroidery. And I love that visual effect. And then I wanted to choose a color palette that I felt was going to be really kind of soothing and cool and great for cozying up to. So this has a turquoise, an emerald green, a kind of faded ink color, and then a kind of a bright burgundy. So I'll get that a little closer so you can see that. And this, I've just finished into a cushion. This is one of our cushion back kits. This is the Essex Linen. I just have to remember that. We've just added the Essex Linen color to the cushion backs. No, I'm sorry. We had the linen. We added the natural because I made an order error and ordered the wrong color and got a whole lot of the wrong color. But then actually, Pamela's my workshop assistant. She made this wonderful discovery that the color that I misordered, that's called natural, is perfect with the traditional ground cloth. So it was all a happy ending. But this is the linen. This is the Essex cotton linen fabric, which it's so confusing that the color name is linen, and this is also Essex cotton linen. So the linen refers to both the fiber content and the color. Very confusing. But we're finding that this linen color is sort of that perfect, just warm-ish white that goes great with the Mickany white fabrics. It's not so bright white as like blind ya, but it works really, really well. So that's the Adriatic Aster with the sole wool. That's available now. We expect it to be really not busy over the holiday workshop closure from Christmas to New Year's. And we were. Lots of orders came in. Wow, lots of you had Christmas money to burn, which is awesome. So I'm a little bit behind getting the kits made, but we should have them ready by the end of the week. And so if you order now, like they'll be ready by the end of the week. Okay, then the next release this month for January is Stavroula. Now, some of you may recognize this as a pomegranate collection pattern by the name of Grecian Cross. And I decided to change the name. Stavroula is a Greek name and actually means like little crosses. So I thought it was just a much more evocative name. So this design is so classic to Greek folk embroidery. I have probably seen it in friends' collections at least 3 different times on all different kind of ways. I've seen it done as a repeating half drop motif repeat table runner, very large. I've seen it done as a little tiny piece with just one of the motifs done as a little tiny table mat, I've seen that one done like in tans and ecrues, like on kind of a really dark sakari, like kind of that dark ecru fabric. So very, very different look. And I've seen it I've seen it pop up in different places. So it's clearly a design that was really popular for a while in Greece. I'm guessing probably in the 50s and 60s is what I'm guessing. Probably was somewhere in a needlework booklet. I actually designed mine off of as the inspiration, I used both a photo of a friend's piece and part of a vintage needlework booklet. So that was kind of the perfect way. But when I finished it, most of the ones that I had seen, the fill color in here, where it's light blue here, was like an ecru. And ecru just doesn't really jump out from the natural or white fabrics. And I knew I wanted to do it on the traditional ground cloth on the white, because I like kind of rotating this fabric in a lot. I really like this. I did not stitch this one. But I really I love this fabric. It's really a fun one to stitch on because it's so easy to see the threads. And I've also discovered that the traditional ground cloth works particularly well with designs like this that have a lot of fill stitches that are outlined. So let me see, so I can get closer to that so you can see what I'm talking about. It's almost like the 26 count traditional ground cloth has it has room to breathe. So those outline stitches really, really pop on it. So, so someone stitched this from the pomegranate collection, which is very exciting. And I was so thrilled because as soon as I put this one on the pomegranate collection, I thought, oh, I really should just stitch that and release it because it's such a great design. The great thing about this design too, is that it's just a 2-tone color palette. So you can change this out to anything you want. I mean, if you want to stitch it yourself, just hop on over to the PDF downloads and grab the download pattern and then grab a little traditional ground cloth by the yard. I think we do fat quarters, which I think would be perfect for this design. I think, yeah, fat quarter should be perfect for it. And then you could do it in, I've toyed around with actually doing it in shades of greens. You could do it in like alizarin, which is like a soft coral with maybe a red outline. You could do it in, I'm looking at my floss. You could get really creative and do it with like 924 gray, green, medium with like black outlining. I mean, there's just a lot of ways you can have fun with this design. So, and it features a lot of motifs. I would probably say, I mean, this is an interesting one because it's such a little buffet of motifs because we have the very classic Greek cross here. We have another sort of crosslet design here that feels almost, this to me feels very Byzantine. And then this design here, the little sort of palmette design here, I don't know if you can see that. I'm probably too far away. The palmette right here is a very sort of classical world. So I think it's so interesting that in this one piece, we have sort of a classical feel, we've got a sort of Byzantine feel, and moving forward in history, something that feels a little bit more maybe Renaissance kind of feel, maybe a little Venetian. And then, of course, the scrolls, anything with scrolls, very, very Venetian. So lots and lots of motif complexity in this piece. And I finished, and then I added a little sort of strong little basic border to it because I felt like the design was, some of these designs, when they get a lot of scroll work and things going on, they're so delicate that they almost need something kind of grounding on the outer border. So this was one of those where I really needed like a very grounding outer border. And then I've finished it as a table runner, but you could very easily turn this into a bolster pillow. It'd be a really cool bolster pillow, I think. Anyways, so that's Stavroula. So that's available now. Again, probably will ship Thursday or Friday, maybe even Monday, but it's now available. So Stavroula. Okay, moving along. Let's talk about what's coming up next. Ooh, because I'm excited about this. Okay, so last spring, I kind of went down the rabbit hole of Bulgarian embroidery and really fell in love with some of the motifs and ended up adding this particular Bulgarian piece to my personal collection. So you can see that. Now, this piece is very much probably made in the 70s, sometime in the 60s or 70s. It's got a very 70s color palette. We've got the orange and the yellow and the green and lots of fill in the white, and then of course the kind of warm brown. So a very classic groovy color palette, but I was so struck with the motif. The motif is so beautiful. And I felt like this color palette, while it's very indicative of its time, and actually I probably still would even consider using this like in my home, I felt like it didn't do justice to these great big tulip motif. I felt like these kind of faded into the design. So I wanted to do something different. I started doing a little bit more research and discovered that this tulip design is very common to Bulgarian embroidery and is often worked in red and black. And most of you who are interested in folk embroidery know that a lot of folk embroidery is worked in red and black. It's very high contrast and it doesn't go with a lot of modern interiors. So I'm always looking for ways to kind of translate that very high contrast red and black into something that is a little bit still very classic and that will have a lot of longevity to it. Like you'll want it in your home now and you'll want it in your home in 10 years and 20 years. And so it's very timeless, but not quite so high contrast. So I used this as the beginning starting point, and I came up with this. This was what I came up with. So this is my upcoming design. I'm calling it Sofia Tulips. Sofia is the capital of Bulgaria. So we're giving a nod to that. And for this, I used most of the original motifs in there. I changed a couple of things. And I also worked at it's on a much smaller count fabric. That fabric is probably closer to a like 10 stitches to the inch. This is 30 count, our 30 count vanilla Greek linen. So the design looks much finer, much more intricate. And then I changed up the color palette because I really wanted those tulips to pop. And so it's the 355 terracotta. You know me, that's like one of my most used colors. It's that wonderful warm bricky red that's really versatile. Goes in a lot of different decor. It fits into a lot of different decor schemes. And then I used the 924 gray green medium. It's my favorite warm blue. And then I used the 733 golden olive medium because I really wanted that gold feeling, but I wanted it to be almost have kind of a coppery, like a brassy tint to it, really. Much more of a kind of a brassy greenish undertone. And this is kind of my new favorite gold. I've been using this a lot over the last 6 months. And I like that kind of like, it almost provides a little bit of like a little nod to like a metallic texture, which I really like. And then there's little tiny touches of avocado green because I really love that little bit of green. And then instead of outlining in a warm brown or a black as would have been done traditionally, I used the 3787, which is the brown gray, very dark, which is the worst color name ever. I would like to personally lobby that we call it faded ink. I just think it's so cool because it reminds me of like ink that you've seen in old letters or something that's kind of faded from black. So there's definitely that black tint, but it feels aged. It has like an aged quality. So I use that as my, instead of a brown. That 3787 also has, I guess probably if you analyzed it, it almost has a very faint greenish undertone. And I like that too, because I feel like it really plays well with the golds and the warmer colors. It's not super warm on its own, but it plays well with those warming colors. And so I designed it as a cushion cover because I wanted a new cushion cover. I was ready for one more cushion on my couch because can you have too many cushions? No, you cannot. That's the answer. And so this one I designed, and this is a big stitch. You can clearly tell that. I think it's over 20,000 stitches. It might be like closer to 24, 25,000 stitches, but such a fun stitch. I found that I really enjoyed working on this. I think partly because each tulip section, each motif fits in your Q-snap so easily. Like if you're using a Q-snap and like a Lowry work stand or some sort of frame, it's so nice. I'm working on a design, I'll show you in a minute, where it's like this border. I have to constantly be unsnapping my Q-snaps and moving over 4 inches and snapping up and moving over. I liked this one because it was just get in there and stitch for a bunch before you had to move anything. It also has a really fun little outer border here that I'll be releasing as a free chart. So that'll be coming, when we release this, we'll release the free chart too. So that'll go on the free chart page. And then this outer border is just really fab. That kind of like serrated flower kind of outer border is really, really fun. Loads of outlining or back stitches here in this design, which also really lends that intricacy. So this is just, I have to say, this is one of my favorite things I've stitched recently. Partly it's just so impressive when it's finished, and it just really exemplifies that just vibrancy and beauty and visual wow of folk embroidery. So I started posting pictures of this on Instagram, and I started getting people asking me, saying that I had several people comment, oh, well, I love that, but like, can you actually like what other designs would go with that? I want to make 2 or 3 coordinating cushions. And I was like, oh, why has that never occurred to me? So I decided that I'm going to release 2 other designs that are in the exact same color palette that they'll all be standalone kits. But if you're looking to make a trio of cushions that kind of all coordinate together, that's what they'll be. And the second one, and I'll release this the same month. So this is releasing next month. Sofia Tulips is releasing next month. What we'll also release with it is a smaller design with an all over repeat. And this is Chios Crisscross. And you can see I haven't even finished it yet. I just finished stitching it like right after Christmas. And same color palette, same linen fabric, but a very, very different design. So when you have them on your couch or wherever you're going to display them, they're going to look really cool together because they're going to have this kind of mix and matchy feel. And then the third cushion in that series is going to be the Somerset Meander design, which is actually a departure from folk embroidery, but I thought it would be really cool in the mix, at least right now. Haven't started stitching it, might change my mind. But it is a meander pattern inspired by the mosaic tile floors that were designed by Owen Jones, who's a very famous British decorative artist and architect of the 1800s in Britain. Anyways, and so I kind of did a deep dive into Owen Jones this past year and was really looking into his work, and I was so struck by how the mosaic tile work would adapt so well to cross stitch. And it's a really cool geometric, highly intricate geometric meander design that's a border. So the trio of cushions will be a full design cushion, an all over cushion, like with kind of a big white border. And then there'll be a border cushion, one that's just square border. So there'll be kind of three different styles, but all done in the same color palette. So stay tuned for that. I won't have the Somerset Meander done in time to release with these two, but at least these two will release. And then when I get the Somerset Meander done, then I'll basically feature those as a trio. I'm even thinking, I don't know, I'm even thinking that we may even offer that. One of the ways we may offer that is to make it a kit that has all three cushions in it. So that might be an option, kind of like make all three of them. So I'll see. We'll definitely offer them individually, but I have been thinking about maybe doing all three and like with a little bit of a discount or something. So if you have thoughts on that, leave me a note in the comments. Okay, moving along. Then next up after, this is the February release, and then the March release, I'm going to be focusing in March on cross-stitch designs that are reminiscent of Greek folk weaving. There is a huge weaving tradition in Greece. Beautiful, beautiful weaving. You can just Google images that, and there's some lovely, lovely things. There's a wonderful Greek weaver, Julia Striou, on Instagram, and her stuff is just wonderful. You know what I'll do? I'll probably do a shout out in the store, in my stories, or do a post so that those of you who enjoy Greek textiles, you can go follow her because her stuff's really neat. She has a weaving workshop on one of the Greek islands. I can't remember which one right now. And it's really cool to see the interchange between cross stitch and weaving. And even in some old vintage patterns, you'll see designs. Once in a while, you'll see a design that is actually given in two different patterns, the same design, and this is one of them, where it's given in two different patterns, and one is for weaving and one is for cross stitch, which is really cool. So this design I'm calling Copper Branches, and it's a very classic historical type of design. We have a very stylized kind of leaf shape almost with branching coming out, two little birds, and the little kind of like almost like terra firma motif, like coming out of the ground kind of a thing. Then what I'm doing for this one, I originally designed it as a table runner. Let me show you that. The table runner, as you can see, is very big. The table runner is on 26 count Mikanee, which is a mercerized cotton. Oh, sorry, wait a second. This is the 26 count is not mercerized. I always forget that. The 30 count is, the 26 is not. But it's got a really nice kind of polish to it. And this design is just so big that by the time you put three of them together on a table runner, it's just a big table runner. And some of you guys like having a bigger table runner. This would be great for like a coffee table or like just a bigger accent table or down the middle of your dining room table or something like that. So this, I designed it, and then I was like, well, I want to make sure that I don't go too far down the rabbit hole of everything being complex and over 20,000 stitches is kind of where I live in my brain. But I know I always want folk embroidery to be accessible to people that are just beginning. That's really important to me, that people have, that it is easy to access learning this skill, that you should be able to sit down with a kit and in a couple of hours, you should be cross stitching. You can start the day not knowing how to cross stitch, and you can end the day knowing how to cross stitch and be well on your way to your first project. That's really important to me. So for this one, I was like, this is so big. Interestingly enough, it's not a huge amount of stitching. I think this one comes in at right around 10,000 stitches. So it's an impressive piece with not a huge amount of stitching. So then I was looking at it and I was like, oh wait, we can just turn it in. We can use the motif and turn it into a little wall hanging piece. And a lot of you love these little wall hanging pieces. These are a lot of fun because you can just hang them someplace, or you can use your, here's my plug for my fancy pants. This is a very fancy purse stand. So if you're one of those people that own those like $5,000, $10,000 Birkin bags and you want to display them, this is what you use. But if you're an embroidery designer looking for a cool way to show off embroideries, you use them for your embroideries. These are cool. They're on Amazon and they actually fold. They all come apart and fold flat. And then this thing, let me show you. This little guy here has a set screw. Whoops, there I did it. There's a set screw. So you can basically set it to whatever height you want within about a 4-inch range. And you can kind of twist it too, however you want. I use these when I do trade shows, but I also just use them around my house sometimes too. And if I can get the wall hanging off my hand, there we go. They're a great way to show off little bits of embroidery. If you have an accent table, you can kind of put one of these there and add a plant, an instant little decor tableau. That's kind of fun. So the copper branches, those will be coming out. Both kits will come out in in March. Along with that is, I wanted to kind of keep with the weaving theme. And this is another, again, I haven't finished it yet, but this is a new all over design called Athena's basket. You're like, I don't see a basket. I'm like, I know, stay with me. It's a little high concept. This one actually has a very wonderful spool motif. I'm going to actually get a little closer on that so you can see that. So those little kind of arrowy things almost look like spools. And with spools, I instantly think of weaving. And Athena is the goddess of, the patron goddess of weaving and the fiber arts. So there you go. It's kind of a high concept name, but I liked it. And this one's also done in a very classic warm Mediterranean palette. I loved stitching this one. This is on the, okay, great. Now I'm going to say it. This is on the 30 count ivory Micanee, which is mercerized. This is the new ivory for the first, pretty much for the beginning when I started Avlea. The color they only had a color called ecru, also known as sakari. And it's a very dark, kind of brownish ecru. And you pretty much either loved it or hated it. And I found it a little challenging because it was so warm. It was such a warm color, very Mediterranean, very warm. And I asked at the mill, do you have anything that's more of an ivory? Anything that's more of an ivory? And lo and behold, one of my shipments a couple months ago, they included samples. And I was like, yes, finally, the ivory. So the ivory's here, which I'm really excited about. So it's just a really great, really versatile color. Warm, but not brown. So very good there. Okay, moving along. I told you, I had a lot to show you. This is like a huge backlog for the year, or for the last few months. Oh, this is very exciting. Those of you, okay, so, it was a couple of years ago. I had ordered some little muslin bags for a craft project for some kids I was working with, and we didn't use all of them. And one day we were making up some of the embroidery kits and we had the stamps out. And I was like, oh, I bet you could stamp the muslin bags. That'd be so cool. It'd be like a fun little way you could stamp a bag and have a really pretty design on your muslin bag. So I did it and I thought, oh, this would be fun to put on the website. I thought nobody's going to want these, but we'll just put them up. We had like 12 of them. So I said, oh, this would be great. We'll like create a little work bag where there's like a hoop and your needle minder and your needles. And it'd be really fun for people just starting to stitch, or those who like wanted just a convenient little work bag, because I always keep my embroidery when I'm not working on it. I keep it in a cotton bag just to protect it, just in case. I live with a teenager and a dog, so I have to take preventative steps to protect my embroidery. So I started offering the work bags, and lo and behold, they started flying off the shelves. We had to order more muslin bags and then more muslin bags. But the issue is that the muslin bags and stamping them with our old-fashioned stamps is very difficult. Pamela and I have both had it with hand stamping muslin bags, because it's like all the pressure, and then the muslin is just enough scoochy that like at least 20% of them end up being rejects. So I was like, okay. So I started working with one of my overseas suppliers, and I was like, okay, can you guys like make us a bag but where it's pre-printed? And yes, they can. So I'm really excited. These are actually being made right now. We are going to have two sizes and 2 designs. So really excited about this. They'll come pre-printed with the design, and the design will be pre-printed in this like nice kind of sepia color. So you don't have to stitch it. You can just leave it the way it is. Use it as a gift bag. And they'll be the 8x10 size, and they'll be the 12x15 size. And they're just simple muslin bags, but they're a great way to protect your embroidery. I don't like using plastic to store my embroideries because plastic off-gases chemicals that discolor fibers. So cotton muslin bag is just a better way to go. It lets everything breathe. Then 2 sizes and 2 designs. So of the different designs we've tried, the 2 most popular, well, let's see, we haven't done the mirror medallion yet, but the Thessaly floral is far and away our most popular work bag design. So each size will come in either Thessaly floral or the mirror medallion. And the cool thing is when I sent them the artwork, I thought they were going to print the big bag, which is this design, but it came in this way and I was like, ooh, they can print it larger. How cool is that? Now, lots of you are actually opening these up and stitching these as your work bag, and that's great too. So this will be a little easier to stitch. The designs will be printed on, so it's a lot better than us hand stamping all of them. But it means that I'm going to run out of work bags. I have only a few left on the website of the old hand stamped ones. I think we're down to maybe a dozen left. And these probably won't be in for another couple of weeks. So if you had your eye on one of the older work bags, now's your time, because we'll be launching these hopefully, I'm really hoping late January, early February. So we'll have those. Okay, wow. This is just chock-a-block embroidery today. So why don't I show you kind of the next things that are in process. So those are some of our releases, the upcoming releases, and then here's what's kind of coming after that. So, and I may feature these things like later on, I'll feature them again when they're like in their fully finished form in another FlossTube, but at least you get a little bit of a sneak peek, because if you've sort of hung out till now in this video, you deserve this. So, okay, the first one that has gotten tons of love, tons of love on Instagram is the Aegean Arbor design. I just finished this a couple weeks before Christmas. Wow, I love this design. I really went out on a limb with the color palette, and all I get on Instagram is people loving the color palette, and I love it too. So this originally would have been stitched, this is another one of those designs, maybe I'll hold it this way, that would have been stitched in reds, blacks, high contrast colors. And I went with a very sort of soothing oceanic type palette of warm blue, the golden olive, and then 936 avocado, dark, avocado green, very dark. And I loved it. I just love how this sings. It's restful and intricate at the same time. It's just lovely. I'll be finishing this as a table runner. This is actually going to be my pre-cut piece for 2024 for my eldest granddaughter. So those of you who haven't heard me talk about that, there's a Greek custom of women in the family stitching textiles for children as they grow up. And then when they launch into adulthood, those children are given a box of textiles that they can use to ornament and adorn their first place that they're living on their own. It's a really beautiful tradition. It's a lot like the American Hope Chest tradition. And so every year I plan a pre-cut piece for each of my granddaughters. And so this year, this is my eldest daughter Miriam's granddaughter. My eldest granddaughter Miriam, this will be her pre-cut piece, and it'll be finished as a table runner. So I'll show you more of that in another FlossTube. We can talk more about that. Then this just came in, and actually as I'm looking at these, I'm going, wow, just if you wonder about like how different people stitch and everything like that, here's let's talk about that for a minute. This is my piece after I finish stitching. It's wrinkly. My backs are not super clean. They're cleanish, but I'm always so wanting to just keep stitching. I just can't really be bothered to worry about the back too much. So hopefully I just hope that sets those of you free who are worrying about the back of your embroidery. Just don't. Just get on with the stitching. I know for some of you, you love that precision, and I honor that too. The precision is beautiful. There are a couple of our Avlea sample stitchers that send things back to me, and I literally cannot even figure out how they got the back so clean. So this is me, rumply, kind of sketchy back, okay? Now, Cindy, one of our amazing Avlea sample stitchers, who is incredibly generous, Cindy will often stitch a sample and then just send it to me and tell me to keep it because she wants to support folk embroidery. Can we just have a moment for that? I feel like, wow. Sorry, it like almost makes me cry because I feel like the Avlea community has shown me so much generosity. Okay, I'm not gonna cry, but I just love that this is what embroidery and crafting and making and creating does for us. It leads to greater and greater kindness and generosity. And if that isn't a force for good, I don't know what is. So Cindy, of course, sends in her sample, perfectly pressed, with a literally gorgeous back, okay? So some people's stitching looks like this. Some people learned a specific way. And they have these beautiful backs to their stitching. And everything is like perfectly pressed and just perfect. And some of us are just sort of like, rough and tumble, let's just get this baby done. And both are okay. Both are okay. However you stitch, however it makes you happy to stitch, just go with that. Don't worry too much about doing it perfectly. Perfection is not the goal here. The goal here is to create and make and enjoy and delight in the beauty of folk embroidery. That's the goal. So this is, now that I've kind of I'm going to step down off my soapbox now. So Cindy, so I released the Mylena. Okay, so in the fall, I was able to get a group of Ukrainian embroideries from a wonderful woman in Ukraine. I found her on Etsy, and she had a bunch she had 5 textiles that weren't in great shape and that were definitely done in those kind of 70s colors. But there were great examples of Ukrainian folk embroidery. So I got the lot of them, and I've actually been able to design 4 of them. And all 4 or 5, maybe I've done all 5. 4 of them made it to the pomegranate, no, 3 made it to the pomegranate collection, and 1 we're actually going to be releasing as a table runner design. I cannot wait for you guys to see it. It's gorgeous. But I had this little design that was a little cloth, and it was done in orange and yellow. So very hot colors that I didn't really feel like were going to match with a lot of interiors today. And so I put together the little pomegranate collection pattern. I released it right before Christmas. And 11 days later, Cindy sends me this. This isn't exactly a tiny design either. It looks small, but it is actually like 9,000 stitches. So she did it in 11 days. Wow. So this is great because this means that the Mylena design, which I think is a wonderful classic folk embroidery design, I'm going to be able to release it. And I have another stitcher who actually wants to stitch it who's stitching it for me right now, actually, on the 30 count Mickey. So this is going to be one of those designs that we have 1 price point on the Mickey 30 count because the Mickey is a little cheaper than the linen, and 1 on the linen. So I love that when that happens. And then if I can figure it out when I finish it, I'm going to try and finish it as a cushion cover first, like kind of just baste it in place as a cushion cover. So you can see what that option is. And then I will unbaste it, and then I will finish it with a drawn thread hem so that we can try and have a couple of different options for how this can be finished. So that's Mylena border. So that will be coming soon. Then what's in my hoop right now, just to finish up, what's in my hoop is a design that actually I was working on, and then I sat down because I'd screwed up on the border. I was working on it well over a year ago. I've had this design on my list for 2 years. I got a vintage embroidery 2 years ago that was this design, but it was on a fabric that's called Helvetia, and it's like a really, really fine, lightweight version of Mickey. It's very sheer. That's really its quality. It's sheer. And I didn't really love that sheerness, but the design was so straight up folk that I just loved it. So this is a very delicate design. This one's going to actually be a large square. I think by the time I finish the hem, this one will end up being about 34 inches by 34 inches. But it's very graceful and delicate, and it is a complex design, but there's not a lot of stitching because each corner just has this simple rose motif, which actually, I'll put it this way so you can actually see it how it's supposed to be. This beautiful serrated, very stylized rose motif, and then the outer border is just this really kind of simple little outer border with checkerboard and little florets. Let me see if I can hold that up for you so you can see that. This, I am working on the 32 count parchment linen. I only have, when I do this, this is going to be a limited release kit because I only have one bolt of that fabric. It's a pretty good size bolt. I'll be able to make quite a few kits off of it, but I don't know that I can get that same exact fabric again. So this is going to be kind of a really special limited release, really cool, because I don't do that many designs that are that huge. And I thought this one would actually be beautiful. I'm planning on actually displaying it on my coffee table, kind of diamond fashion, which I thought would look really cool with like kind of the ends hanging down. So that's what I'm working on stitching right now. And then after that, when I'm done with that, which actually this one's going together quite quickly because it's really not that many stitches, I will be working on the Somerset Meander border design to go with the trio of cushions that's releasing in February. Well, now, that was a bit of a whirlwind. So lots going on in the Avlea folk embroidery world. And as usual, I am so grateful for your support. Your support, buying kits, referring me, sending the emails to friends that you know would enjoy the emails. Oh, and I'll just give a plug. I send out a weekly email. I really try hard to honor your time. I only send one a week. That's it. And you can opt out at any time because I feel like I need to be very respectful of your time and attention because that is your resource. And so the email list is a great way, sharing that. I love your referrals. And I love how many of you send me like wonderful emails and comments. It just makes my day. I love this work. I'm so glad that I get to share it with you and that your support of it allows me to keep doing it. So looking forward to lots of great folk embroidery in 2024 and so happy you're along for the ride. Happy stitching.